All right. Welcome, everyone. It's so great to have you here with the amazing Garrett Gunderson, who, if you took a look at the invite, you'll see that he basically traded in his tie as a wealth manager for a microphone as a stand up comedian. So we'll get into that today as well. We'll have lots of energy and excitement along with money talk. I know money is everyone's favorite word, and one of those words where we have to figure out what we're going to do with all that money we're making. So that's why I brought Garrett in. Why not bring the best in to talk to us about our mindset around money and how we can continue to live our richest lives?
Dark background is my wife's doing. She designed this office like a speakeasy, so it's pretty cool vibe and all that kind of stuff. But I do like the light background that you've got there. I tend to speak fast, so hopefully I see it's being recorded. My plan is to help you keep more of what you make, build automated wealth structures so you capture wealth along the way, understand your money persona so you understand kind of these hidden factors that determine your success or failure when it comes around to money, especially in times where there's economic turmoil or feelings of scarcity. How can you avoid those missteps or mistakes that kind of hold you back if you don't understand the difference between your shadow and winning persona? So, yeah, we maybe I'll be funny. I don't know. You never know. Like I do comedy, but now I've been put on the spot. Like maybe I'll tell a few jokes as we go through this. But my plan is to really make sure that people can get their financial house in order and look at different wealth frameworks because most of the world is training people to believe that wealth is a game of accumulation. But in that game, they're really told three things that are kind of limiting and faulty. Number one, it takes money to make money. Look, I get if you have money, you can make money with your money, but to really make money, it takes relationships and ideas, value and exchange. Money is a byproduct of value creation. So, value creation is the cause and money is the effect, or more easily said, money follows value. So, if we believe that it's about we have to go earn money and then just save 10% or however much and risk it for 30 years and wait, and see what happens in the market, this is a dogmatic and slow process with accumulation. So the notion of it takes money to make money, and the second thing that's taught erroneously is that high risk equals high return. The wealthiest people that are sustainably wealthy are great at mitigating and managing risk. Yet the world is telling us to take risk, which usually means the further away we are from understanding how our money works, how it's going to benefit us now and in the future, how it might create cash flow, and how we can address risk, the more risk we take. And most people are not really investors, they're gamblers. We're gamblers if we just put money in a retirement plan, we don't know what companies we're holding within that. That if we don't grow ourselves and we try to skip that step and just grow our money, that's what creates risk. But we call it even worse savings a lot of times. People are like, oh, I'm saving for retirement, but they're not saving, they're speculating. They're putting it in something like, well, I'm diversified. But most people are diversified or divorcified. They're putting their stuff in things that they don't know what's going to work or what doesn't. It's almost like an admission of guilt. Like, I don't know, we diversified. Maybe this one works, maybe that one works. And then finally, you're in it for the long haul. Like, you're in it for the long haul. Things will pass you by if you think about long haul, devoid of accountability with a lack of responsibility. So that's the faulty model, is that people believe wealth is a function of how much money you can set aside, how much risk you're willing to take, and how long you're willing to wait. That is not providing wealth. As a matter of fact, 95% of people following that model are not financially independent at age 65. 95% failure rate, not from a lack of effort, from a faulty model. So what's a different model that you could potentially follow that will help you to build more sustainable wealth and really redefine some of the concepts that I think hold us back? Like, one of the concepts that's limiting is that we were taught in an industrial age about retirement. And I get it, in the industrial age, retirement made a lot of sense. My dad was a coal miner. If you work in a coal mine, retirement is one of the best ideas ever because you get out of that danger, right? And you can finally enjoy life. But the problem is, if people trade time for money and they do things that they don't enjoy so that one day, someday, they can finally enjoy them when they're too old to actually do it, that's a broken model. So rather than look at the accumulation model that leads to retirement, I want to look at the acceleration model that leads to economic independence. And economic independence is a place where you have enough cash flow coming from assets to cover your expenses. And there are three major assets that are typically in one of these categories that are most effective at doing that. One is real estate. Real estate is an asset that could create cash flow. Another one is businesses. And some people might be in the business of real estate and have strategic advantage because of that. or intellectual property. Intellectual property is one of the most underutilized, leverageable assets in the world. And most people are thinking about investments as being stocks, bonds, and funds, but those often don't create cash flow. So how can you create more cash flow from assets to cover your basic expenses? When you're there, you're economically independent, which means any active dollar you earn can grow your assets. Most people are trading time for money, taking 10% of that earning, putting it into a plan that's locked away till 59 and a half, and struggling to live the life that they want. If you become financially independent in 10 years or less, and I'll share the model of how to get there. If you can get there in 10 years or less, you can swing for the fences in your vision because you know your assets are providing the basics. When your assets provide the basics, that's a 10 times advantage because you're not saving 10% of your income to try to earn 10% over 30 years. You could take 100% of your active income to buy more assets. That's exponential in what that could do for you. So how do you create economic independence? What is this acceleration model? Well, first off, before trying to scrimp or save or sacrifice or delay or defer, I'm sure you've heard tons of people say, set it and forget it, invest early, often, and always. But if you just start when you're 20 years old, then when you're 65, it's going to exponentially grow in compounding interest. Compounding interest is slow. Compounding interest takes forever. It's one of the most over-promoted philosophies in finance. And I know that might be controversial for some people, but the bottom line is compound yourself. The real growth comes in this format. Learn how to make more money. Invest in yourself. And part of that investment is in your quality of life so you enjoy life along the way. Part of that's in your skill set so you know how to make more money by serving more people, solving bigger problems, or adding value. And another place to invest is in cash flowing investments. So make more money. Then number two is keep more of the money that you make. There's 4 I's to efficiency on how you keep more of the money you make. Number one is the IRS. Most people unknowingly tip the government. Look, tipping the government is like tipping the waiter who ate 37.5% of your meal and peed in your soup. I don't think that you should be tipping them, you know? Like, only pay them what's legally and ethically required and no more. Then the second I to efficiency is interest. You might be able to renegotiate interest rates, restructure loans, or reallocate funds to be more efficient to keep more of what you make in that category. The third I is investments. There's a lot of hidden fees, there's a lot of non-performing fees, and there's a lot of cost to having risk and volatility. And ultimately, if we can remove those or at least identify them and minimize them, you can end up with a lot more wealth in the future. For example, if you had 100 grand, and again, we'll go with compound interest, it takes forever, so we wait for 30 years for it to earn 10% a year, that 100 grand goes to 1.74 million. But if you only earn 9.2% because of fees, that same 100 grand in the same period of time grows to 1.4 million, $340,000 less for less than 1% fee, because compounding cost is the opposite side of compounding interest. So if we can remove some of that, you're going to get further faster. And then the fourth I is insurance. A lot of people have duplicate coverages or improper structure. Only insure the catastrophic, not the inconsequential. The inconsequential has the highest cost or inefficiency. So the first dollar of insurance that I pay for is the most expensive dollar. The last dollar is the least expensive because it's the least likely to happen, but the most catastrophic if it does happen. So those 4 I's, IRS, interest, investments, and insurance, it's about detecting and understanding where we're being inefficient, and before ever trying to save more money, plug the financial leaks, keep more of what you make. It's not about cutting back, it's about being more financially savvy so that you get further ahead. So the first way that we work towards economic independence is plug financial leaks. The second thing is, with the money that we've now plugged those leaks with, is let's engineer wealth and reverse engineer and say, how much would be required for one of 3 levels? Your basic survival level, like what are your expenses for that? Your lifestyle level, that maybe you don't have to have a 2-income household, maybe it could be 1 income. And then the third level, which is you could actually have a quality of life that you enjoy if you had enough cash flow coming in from those investments. Now, the basic level is a game changer, the base level of survival, because it just means that you get choice every day on what you do versus feeling like you have to work. A lot of Americans get stuck because they go get a student loan and now they feel like the clock's ticking on them and they got to go hit the workforce, and they skip the steps of discovering the proper career or learning to become a better investor, and they trade time for money just to pay off a loan, and then they find themselves stuck and frustrated. And this is an epidemic that we've faced in our country. So what I'm saying is, plug your financial leaks, reverse engineer, and then really, as you have more and more freedom, be more and more clear about how do you want to contribute to the world? What is your vision? What are the things that you want to do to create the most value? What are the things that help you feel fulfilled, bring energy, and allow you to serve bigger problems to solve and serve more people or more deeply impact the people that you serve? And then when we ask those questions, then we start to unlock the very best of who we are, not thinking that wealth is a game of luck or chance, or not thinking it's a matter of just timing or marrying into it or winning a lottery or picking the right crypto. Like, unfortunately, far too many people take risk because they don't understand that the best investors understand who they are and how they relate to the investments, and they don't invest in everything. They invest only in alignment with their investor DNA. Your investor DNA is your values, it's your competencies, like the things that you have knowledge around or are willing to develop knowledge around, and your drivers, the things that you're interested in, that you have a degree of passion for. And our investor DNA is different from us and other people. So I'm really good with intellectual property. That's why I've written 10 books. I look at that as my greatest way to invest. There's other people that are extraordinary at certain types of real estate, whether that's Airbnb arbitrage, whether that's single family homes, whether it's doing syndications for apartment buildings, whether it's doing fix and flips, whether it's someone that's doing, understands commercial or fractionalized ownership. See, there's different avenues we can go down, but it's really about understanding who are you and how you relate to the investment, because risk isn't in the investment, it's in you, the investor. And if you can increase your human life value, your investor DNA being aligned with where you invest, because you have the knowledge and the savvy, you learn to mitigate risk, you keep more of the money you make, and when you plug the financial leaks, you start to look as a cash flow investor versus an accumulation saver, and then you get economic independence sooner, and now you get to accelerate results. So the third thing to get economic independence, the first is plug financial leaks, the second is engineer wealth. Reverse engineer and say, is the foundation handled? Is there nothing slipping through the cracks? Is everything working synergistically? And then invest in alignment with your investor DNA. The third thing is to accelerate your investment income, you look and see if you have any lazy assets. Do you have anything that's not producing cash flow? For some people, and this is like a tool I like to use, is have people learn their cash flow index. And there's two categories of cash flow index. There's cash flow index when you're the borrower, and there's the cash flow index when you're the investor, okay? And this is really telling of if people need to become better investors or if they aren't willing to become better investors, because let's face it, most of the advice in the world today is what I would call lowest common denominator advice. Here's the lowest common denominator. Never borrow, maximize your retirement plan, don't spend, live on a budget, like the stuff that nobody's inspired by, because here's the real secret, nobody shrinks their way to wealth. These people that tell you to scrimp and save and sacrifice, and that if you just never spend money, you can be a miserable millionaire for the rest of your life, that's not how they live. They're making money giving the advice and creating intellectual property, while the rest of the world is struggling and sacrificing, hating their life because they are hoping for this dream called retirement. And when they get to retirement, it's not even a dream. I'm yelling, I get it, I'm getting passionate. Not funny at all, just angry it seems. But they get to retirement, and this is why my comedy special is called The American Ream. What they thought was a dream is a ream, because now they're subject to three things that really destroy their lifestyle. Think about people that retired 2 years ago. What happened to them? Inflation decimated their purchasing power, just crushed them. What about people that were retired the previous 20 years? Interest rates were so low, it was hard for them to create stable income with their nest egg. Or what happens, because we're at $34 trillion of debt and going up $1 trillion a quarter right now, if they raise taxes? Well, those retirees become subject to tax changes, inflation, and interest rate fluctuations. That's not a life that I want to live, where I'm no longer in charge of the outcome of my income. And what's even more frustrating, where I get all this passion from, is they're taught their whole life never to create cash flow, just set money aside. And now when all the stakes are high, they're supposed to become cash flow investors. They were not trained to do it. That's like someone saying, I'm gonna do a triathlon. I'm gonna do an Ironman. but I'm not going to train because I'm going to save my energy. They're going to drown. I didn't do an Ironman. I'm crazy, but not that crazy. And I remember I was going to get into the water to do this triathlon, and my sister runs up and hands me the phone. It's my mom. She goes, "I have a bad feeling you're going to drown." And I was like, "Thanks for the pep talk, Mom." Right before I get in the water, you know? So anyway, this is the broken model of accumulation. I want you to focus on acceleration. So what if you look at this cash flow index? All you do is you take every loan that you have and you take the loan balance and divide it by the required payment. What's the monthly payment? It's going to spit out a number. If that number of the loan balance divided by the payment is less than 50, you have an inefficient loan. You have a cash hog on your hands. The bank loves it because they don't have a lot of capital at risk, but they're getting a good amount of monthly income or monthly cash flow from that. Now, if it's above 100, you have an efficient loan. It means you're not having a big payment for the amount of money that you borrow. Now let's flip it and look at it from the investor side. If you take what's the lump sum you put into any investment divided by the monthly cash flow, it tells you your investment index on the cash flow index. Now I see people all the time have low cash flow indexes with their loans and high cash flow indexes with their investments. What that means is if they're not willing to do the work and become a better investor, they should just pay off the loan because it's way more efficient. They're going to free up more cash flow. It's going to help them get to economic independence sooner. But if you're a good investor, like, I was able to secure a 30-year mortgage at 2.75% back in 2021. I can, and any day of the week in my sleep without effort, earn more than 2.75%. So by having that, I'm actually way ahead than if I just paid cash for it, because we always pay interest. Whether we pay interest to an institution or whether we forfeit the right to earn interest when we pay cash, there's always an interest cost. Let me break that down a little further. Imagine if I'm willing to lend you money right now and I'm not going to charge you any interest. How much would you guys want? Type in the chat. How much money, if I lend you money and I won't charge interest, how much would you like? Let's see. Giving you a second here in the chat. Making sure you're with me. All of it. Yep. Billion. Yeah, I mean, basically, here's the deal. You can do better than 0%. Now, if I charge 1%, would your, Tyler or Debbie, would your numbers stay the same at 1%?
Sure, 1%.
Yeah, because you can do better. That's called your cost of money. Your cost of money is what amount can you sustainably earn, or what's the highest amount that you're currently paying. If someone's got a 29% interest rate credit card, that's their cost of money. Every time they don't pay that credit card off, it's costing them $1.29. Their cost of money is 29%. But let's just say I knew I could get 5% long term. That might be my cost of money. Maybe someone's is 8%. It depends on your investment options, your investor DNA, and what you can do. But ultimately, when we look at the cash flow index, when it's the investment index, you want it to be a low number. It means you're getting a lot of cash flow off a small amount of money. Maybe because you've got leverage, maybe because you've just been intelligent with the investing, maybe you just focused on cash flow. But if you have, again, a low cash flow index on loans, a high one on investments, then it's probably just best to pay something off. If your cash flow index is high on investments and high on your loans and low on your investments, then stay an investor. We want to accelerate investment income and turn any lazy assets, which are assets not creating cash flow, into cash flow so you become financially independent, so you can accelerate your money, so you get it to do more than one thing. Again, we've been indoctrinated that compound interest is this amazing thing. I've even seen a lot of lies saying that Albert Einstein said it was a miracle. Albert Einstein never said compound interest is a miracle. He said compounding numbers. So Security National Life misquoted him after a conference in Austria about compounding interest. The miracle is that we believe in it so much and at our own expense. Compound yourself, you'll earn more money, make more money first, keep more of the money you make. And in my book, What Would the Rockefellers Do, which I'll just give you at garrettgunderson.com/offer, we do a study in there saying, what if people could double their rate of return versus plug their financial leaks? And what we found was people are 400% further ahead by plugging financial leaks than doubling the return on the retirement plan. So this is, and a lot less risk too. So accelerating investment income is turning any lazy assets that don't create cash flow into cash flow. Plug financial leaks, engineer your wealth, accelerate your investment income. And then fourth is scale your revenue. If you own a business, for example, or you're doing real estate, like how can you scale that? Is it bringing in people, automating processes, adding technology and certain procedures that allow you to be more effective? Is it doing one thing that brings exponential growth? What I find is it's easy for a small business to have a lot of growth, but it's harder for a very big business to have that much growth because they have to saturate a market. They're already saturated the marketplace. So what can you do to scale your revenue? This is, really looking at three types of expenses. The first type is, or not three types of expenses, three types of ways to live within your means. Most people tell you to live within your means. What they mean is budget, cut back, reduce, don't spend. That sucks. The second way is keep more of what you make, which is be more efficient within your means. But this scaling revenue is really the third way, which is expand your means. How do you serve more people? How do you more deeply impact the people you serve? How do you solve bigger problems? How do you add more value? That's the question. That's how you scale revenue. Grow, don't shrink. Scarcity has us think about what we can eliminate, and it gets isolated. It's about fear, doubt, and worry. People in scarcity think profit is only a matter of luck or evidence of deception and coercion. They're the ones that are the Marxists that are crying for equal distribution, even with unequal effort or production. Whereas abundance is saying, hey, I believe in innovation, ingenuity. I believe profit is evidence of value creation. I believe I'm a value creator and I have control over my financial destiny by the actions that I take. And so ultimately, when we start to come up from a place of abundance, we start to think about how we can impact more people, or again, more deeply impact those people. And again, we're going towards economic independence. Now, the fifth part of economic independence, first was plugging financially, second was engineering wealth, the third was accelerating investment income and creating cash flow after determining your cash flow index. The fourth one is scaling your revenue, which is simply, hey, maybe it's, Debbie, I think you said you're going to hire an assistant. That could be an example of scaling. It could be simply taking a model. Like I've got licensing that I do for financial advisors where they can license my content. That's an example of scaling, revenue. That there's plenty of things that you can do. But the fifth one is to make it count. You are your greatest asset. Not a stock, not a bond, not a piece of real estate. It's you. An investment in you will pay the highest dividends and can also improve your quality of life. So why don't you create a life you don't want to retire from? Why don't you design the life that you love? Why don't, rather than wait till retirement to finally enjoy life, maybe take some trips along the way, have some relaxation, rejuvenation, and recreation. Look, unfortunately, I had business partners that died in a plane crash back in 2006. My response was keep all 42 employees and work harder. But that hard work led to exhaustion. And what happened was I was at work more often, getting less done because of diminishing marginal productivity. If you never take time off, you're going to drain your energy. Plus, your team's going to get used to you doing things that they have to grow up and learn how to do when you're away. And if you could be away and then you come back, you could have more energy. Like, what about making the life that you want? I know that the world tries to tell us that it's about the grind, it's about the hustle. We wear this badge and this moniker of, look how good I am. I outworked everyone. Well, maybe you could just be smarter so you don't have to work that hard. Like, I don't know why we brag about like, hey, I'll go until I die. Like, that's not really exciting. Like, I think of the impact of that. Like, there's this episode on Netflix called the My Next Guest of David Letterman, where he actually has on Will Smith. And Will Smith recorded this episode before he slapped Chris Rock at the Oscars. But you could see it in the interview because he talked about, no one will ever beat me. I'll go longer. I'll work harder. And you know what happens? You get drained. You get more irritable. You get grouchy. You get frustrated. There's just like too much pressure. And he never enjoyed even the wins of having a big box office because it could have always been better. Have you ever met those people that have an insatiable appetite for more and they're never content? They're exhausting to be around, and it's like, damn, this is no fun. They never heal from that if they don't get help now. It doesn't flip the switch at age 65 and they're no longer a-holes and exhausting and go, great, now it's all worth it. It's an addiction. See, people usually play one of two games, either play to win, which is the hustle, grind, and work, or play not to lose, which is hold on to, be afraid of, don't let anyone take. And so both of those are forms of scarcity. What I'm saying in this Make It Count section is, what if you design the life that you love? What if you design the game worth playing? Then you enjoy the work and the process along the way. then there's nothing to retire from. You start to delegate now. The things that you hate doing, there are weirdos that like doing them. Let them do the work. Don't be stingy and do it all yourself and end up exhausting yourself. That's not the road to wealth. Wealth is a game of expansion. It's a game of vision. And so I know, like, I did keep my promise to talk fast, which I have done. We've given a little bit of a model here of how to create economic independence and really look at, in a new portfolio, the old portfolio is really telling you high risk equals high return, diversify, wait for the long haul, retire. That's the old portfolio. The new portfolio is, let's focus on economic independence. Let's focus instead of diversify. Build wealth and protect that wealth, being aligned with your investor DNA. Look at the big three: real estate, business, and intellectual property as key drivers for creating cash flow. Create cash flow that shows up even if you don't show up the next day, but still monitor it and manage it so you can maintain it for the long term. These are the philosophies and the arguments that I'm making, and it starts very fundamentally that day one, you just pay yourself first so you never have to budget again. I believe in mindful cash management. This is what mindful cash management is. Every time I get paid, I put a percentage in my wealth capture account, which is a different money market than my actual account that I spend money from. And then I immediately start putting that into other structures where I can either save money or I could grow my money. But ultimately, I'm paying myself first. I go for 15%. I need 3% just to handle fluctuations in taxes, 3% to handle technological change because we're inventing new things all the time, 3% for planned obsolescence, things break, I have to replace them, 3% for propensity to consume. A luxury once enjoyed becomes a necessity, right? I don't want to go back to the way I ate 25 years ago when I knew no better. And then I want 3% for inflation. So I want 15% that's being set aside and then live off the rest. And if I don't spend more than what I make, I don't have to budget. Now, if I do want to be more mindful, I can categorize expenses in 4 ways: destructive expenses that I eliminate, lifestyle expenses that I pay cash for, protective expenses, which is everything from education and asset protection and insurances and trust, whatever I can do to mitigate risk, and then productive expenses, things that I put money in that help me grow, that help me able to grow my income and the people that I'm serving. And so that's something I want to be mindful of. But if I'm starting to go, this is how much money I have for this, and this is how much money I have for this, and this, I start expending so much energy on saving instead of growing. And the game of wealth is not a reductionist game, it's a production game. So pay yourself first, focus on economic independence, accelerate instead of accumulate, and then invest back into yourself. Quality of life, skill sets, cash flowing investments. Then there are other questions like, where do you store your wealth? Unfortunately, in the last 100 years, the US's dollar has lost 95% of its value. It got worse in 1971 when we decided to leave the gold standard and just print it at will. And so, it's kind of frustrating that we are forced to kind of deal with this and invest and handle certain things, because as you provide more value and there's more money that comes in, where do you store that? I store mine in cash value. I store it a little bit in Bitcoin, although that's a double-edged sword in some ways. I think about it more than I want, for number one. So where you store your money matters, but the bottom line is the more value you provide in the world, the more stability and security you're going to have personally. We used to think that stability came from pension plans and retirement plans, but with the way that we deal with quantitative easing and quantitative tightening and massive spending from the Treasury and all this kind of stuff, the world's just kind of changed. And to me, if you want to accelerate your results, you accelerate yourself. And the more you grow yourself and let people understand what you're doing so they can come along for the ride, the more you grow your community, the wealthier that you're going to become. And I think part of it is we have to understand that wealth is semantics. Like, wealth is built through conversation. So what conversations are we committed to? Conversations of abundance and inspiring and possibility, or conversations of complaining and victimhood? We can see, based upon someone's conversation, where they're going in life and what's almost predictable about where they're going to end up, unless they choose their words more selectively. because it either repels people or it attracts people. And if you want to propel people that are victims, speak a victim language. If you want to attract wealthy people, speak a language of possibility and inspiration, and have a life of gratitude and lift people up and give the best of who you are. Unfortunately, I think we don't always give all of what we are because we're afraid we're going to get taken advantage of, but then we lose because we're too busy worried about someone taking advantage of us to actually give the best of who we are, which limits the people that might be the very best relationships for us. And here's the deal. You will get taken advantage of. You will make mistakes. It's part of the process. The question is, will you learn the right lessons or the wrong lessons? The wrong lessons are victimhood, and the right lessons are, hey, those are new ingredients that I can now learn from, heal from, and be more valuable moving forward because I've taken the lessons with me. So I don't know if you plan on interviewing me. I've been talking for 40 minutes straight, I think. So I'll pause here for a minute.
No, this is great. I do have questions, and all of these concepts lead to the questions. I'll give you a second for a beverage. I will say a couple of things just from what you've presented on. I did get the opportunity, along with Cindy, to see Garrett in Charleston, South Carolina, last, I think, November. And he does talk fast. And that's one thing I took away. I thought, no one ever talks as fast as I do, so much that I have to continually slow myself down on coaching calls. And so typically I listen to podcasts at like 1.7 to 2.2 speed, and Garrett gets like the 1 to 1.5. I can really relate to that. The other thing I took away from seeing Garrett speak, and I shared this with Garrett pretty soon afterwards, is that Living Wealthy account, or mindful cash management account, where when I was launching Monterre Coaching, I made the decision to say, okay, I'm going to give this a try and see how it works. And so I am taking those percentages. I put them in a totally separate bank account that's not attached to my business account, so that it's not like, oh, I need money for taxes, let's just move the money. It's a lot of work. I have to go into this other bank account. I have to set up a request to transfer. I have to then make sure it goes through. You can't give them less than 24 hours notice, or they charge you those fees. Like, there's a lot of work that goes into taking money out of that. But I got to that place where, when Garrett was speaking, I thought, for those of us that, for me, it's more my spouse. I don't do 401k, but have that consistent money come out off the top as you would in a 401k. It's really no different. If you take it out off the top, it just feels like a tax payment or a 401k payment. Instead, it's going into this account where then I can do what I want with it. Some of which, like Garrett said, is fly first class. You get the taste of that and you never want to go back. Gratefully, American Airlines has given the Main Plus, where you still get a free beer or something. I don't know, but nothing goes back from first class, right? So you start paying for those lifestyle payments. And at the time, when I got to see Garrett talking, I was at that time of, oh, I better cut back. I better budget. I better watch what I spend, because I'm starting a new company, which I did. However, I did get really intentional with what I was earning to make sure that I was setting that money aside and being able to continue to enjoy the lifestyle that we have. So just some huge takeaways when you hear all this stuff and you start thinking, is this really possible? That's a lot of information. It is. Pick one or two things and just go implement, and then pick the next two. One thing came to mind too, Garrett, as you're talking. For some of the listeners, they have 401ks. For some of them, they don't. What would you say, what is the first step to transition to this? Like, how, outside of the put the money away, where are we putting it? What are we doing with it? What does that transition look like from that normalized save?
One of the books you'll get on the download is Killing Sacred Cows. Although I will tell everybody, Killing Sacred Cows 2.0 is coming out soon. I'm waiting for the copy editor to get it back to me this weekend. What Would the Rockefellers Do, updated and expanded, is done. I'm just waiting to get it published because it's out of print right now. And it's both of those I've rewritten. I'm excited to get them out. They come with full courses. So courses on legacy, courses on investing. So those could be really helpful. But this notion of living wealthy, I didn't really talk about it too much, but I believe wealth is a byproduct of life well lived. So if you're saving 15% in your wealth capture, take another 3%, put in the living wealthy account or more. And then that's just stuff that guilt-free spending, lay down seats on an airplane is one of our favorites, certain restaurants that we might go to, clothes that are overpriced, but I love, like, just things that, you might normally judge yourself for. You're like, this is my reminder that I've already been saving the money and I'm already making progress. So I might as well enjoy life along the way. Because if it's always about constraint and we never enjoy it, that will diminish our energy and it'll get us to only look to the future. And that creates a bad habit of one day, someday, never enjoying the process along the way or enjoying our life today. So I remember my favorite story about that was I had this client that he's worth a ton of money, but he was a cheapskate. Like, we might say frugal to his face, but you know the people, like just never spent money. Like, I've had friends cheaper than him. I've had friends that they've made an art out of going to the bathroom when the bill comes at the table. You know what I'm saying? Like, deep pockets, short arms. It's fine. But this person had money. He just never spent it. And I encouraged him, like when I found $120,000 a month for him in savings. It was actually a really simple strategy, just buying his inventory on a Plum card that he got cash back on. I wouldn't tell him what it was until he promised me he'd spend at least 10% of the money. And he's like, what would I spend it on? Within not too long, he's buying a Nest for the house. He's buying, all these sound systems. He's like, and it wasn't a ton of money compared to what he made, but it transformed his life because all of a sudden he got to enjoy it. Like, we have this relationship in society with the word expense as negative. If you say expense, most people feel it in their gut, like it's something to avoid. But the only way we utilize our money is through an expense. Your expense is someone else's income. We can't enjoy money without an expense other than to look at it and say we have it. So expenses are just utilization. And if we start looking at expenses and there's productive expenses, we put $1 in and more than $1 comes back, that might transform the way we look at that. Or lifestyle expenses are the way that we enjoy our money the most. And it's okay to enjoy your money. Like there's a worthiness issue for some people there. There's a family issue there. I mean, when my wife said, let's go to Italy for a summer, I was thinking, man, my great grandfather left Italy because he couldn't put food on the table, literally, and had to barely make it to Utah to become a coal miner. And we're just going to go hang out in cities he never even went to because he didn't have any money. I had to overcome some of those generational beliefs that had been handed down. That, you got to hold on to everything you got because you never know when it could go away. If you don't have enough money, you could lose your family. And all these kind of thoughts that aren't even our own thoughts that get passed down and reinforced at family parties and at judgments that people say about someone else that we then reflect to ourselves. You got to realize a lot of what we believe about money isn't our belief. It's someone else's that we adopted. And most of the time it was formed before our brain was. We formed those beliefs in childhood. And so everybody has this money story. Often that money story that people tell is the one that they have crafted to protect themselves. Here's what I'll say about money. Like, part of my money story that I don't like to tell is I sold my business for far less than I should have. And I felt super stupid about it because I would have advised any client differently than I did myself, right? So like, that's part of my money story I don't always like to tell. I like to just tell the story of selling a business, not that I got less than what the other offers were and that I ended up divorcing the business in the end. Like, there's stuff like that. So if you can ever find someone where there's a sacred space where it's safe to share and talk about the things you normally won't share, and even go back to what's your first memory of money. Was it a positive memory? Was it a negative memory? I remember my parents talking at the table while my mom's paying bills, saying she felt like she was getting killed with these insurance bills. And that my dad's mind was on strike, and they're like, how are we going to make it? And I was like, if I could just make enough money in the future, my family will be okay. So as a little kid taking that pressure on, that there's always got to be more, and I've got to take care of everyone. And in taking care of everyone, constantly stressing myself. But that came from a belief as a child that then formed and shaped my beliefs as an adult that might have been motivating initially, but led to frustration and scarcity and stress. And so what are those early beliefs, and are they serving you now? So what is it you don't want to share? If you write that down, if you start to talk about that, it will free you. Just being able to acknowledge it. But most importantly, we all have these blind spots underneath, the things we can't share because we can't see it, because it's paradoxical to us, because maybe it was so painful at one point, we promised to never let anything like that happen again. And anything that reminds us of that creates stress, creates frustration. And so what's your money story? Is it an empowering one? Is it uplifting? Is it riddled with victimhood, or is it part of you being a victor regardless of circumstance? and you hold the pen today, how would you like to write it moving forward? I mean, a lot of us live with regret, like we should have did this and not done that, or if the, there's like all those kind of things, but those don't serve us unless we use it as, all right, why do I feel this emotion? Process it, and what can I learn from it? Most people don't make the same mistake twice. They make it 17 or 18 times. That's what happens when we don't face these things. So that's starting back to the conversation of living wealthy is saying that we're worth it, that you value yourself, that most people in the world get stuck on one thing when it comes to money. What's the price? You see it. There's all this marketing about savings and special days and here's the discount, and people will buy something on discount they don't necessarily want or need, and something they value less, but because they're trained to think cheaply and transactionally. But the cost is different than price. Cost is, well, how much time is it taking? What's the economic impact? Can you think of things in your life that were a higher price but a lower cost? Maybe like, I don't know, for me, it's flying first class because I can write and I can be comfortable, and I don't come out like with my back hurt, like trying to, sit. However, I mean, that might be a higher price but a lower cost because I'm being productive. I'm enjoying my life, and that production turns into books that I write that wouldn't have happened otherwise because I can't T-Rex it, right? Or maybe it's the right accountant, might be a higher price but a lower cost because economically, it's just, they've saved you more even though you paid them more money. So price and cost, but the thing that most people neglect is value. What do you enjoy? What do you appreciate? What gives you a feeling of satisfaction? Like, what if we led with value first? Do I value this? Then what's the economic impact? And then what's the price? That's a more flow of financial freedom. And financial freedom is when money's no longer the primary reason or excuse that we do or don't do something. It's a consideration. Money's a consideration, just not the consideration. So when value is first, we win. When we can think about our value, grow our value, and appreciate the value that we provide in the world, we win. If we don't understand that, we sabotage results. That's why the money persona is so helpful. You can take your money persona quiz, garrettgunderson.com/quiz, and understand what are these subconscious things that govern success or failure, that lead to missteps or that lead to prosperity. So that money persona quiz is very insightful and helpful. And if you're married, it's helpful to understand theirs as well, because two people usually don't have the same money persona.
Yeah, and I was talking to Garrett about that when we recorded the podcast. As you go through, I won't spoil it for the quiz or the book, but when you go through the different personas, I realized that I was one and have transformed to the winning persona through listening and reading a lot of what Garrett has put in front of us. And then as I'm reading it, I'm sitting there, and you will do the same. Oh my goodness, that's my spouse. And it's humorous in the sense of you start to realize where some of these characteristics come in, and then ways to encourage that. I will say with the personas too, Garrett, I know the majority of our listeners have children. So how do you talk to your kids about money? I have 3 college kids that address themselves as broke college girl mom. I have 3 daughters. And so they choose to take 19 hours and shop at Plato's Closet for the discount dress that I'll go to the boutique and buy full price and then probably drop it off at Plato's Closet. But how do you talk about it to your kids?
My 18-year-old read Money Unmasked. And when I wrote Money Unmasked, I thought about my kids. So at 18, that book is a great book for someone that age. But for the earlier ages, I've got the I Am Money book I wrote with Julia Cook. And that book is a conversation specifically for kids, kindergarten through 3rd grade especially, where it helps them understand, and it gives the parent the questions to ask. Because it's just something that a lot of parents feel like, oh, well, I'm good here, not so good here. Well, how do I don't want them to carry some of these bad habits. I only want them to know the good. Well, it's about having a conversation that they're the asset. It's a conversation about money can be so helpful with taking care of the basics, which can make them feel happier. But no matter how hard money tries, it can't make them happier eventually, right? That's an inside game, and that they can invest in it themselves and develop skill sets. And if they are abundant enough, they get to a place where they can even share. And so that book is really great. And I watch people just read it right there in front of me, so everybody can read it. It's got pictures in it and everything. So adults will learn from that book. They don't have to admit it.
Yeah. Great. Cindy asks, can you repeat the cash flow index equations for the borrower and investor?
The borrower is your loan balance divided by the payment. The investor is the deposit that you made to the investment divided by the cash flow. And what you're looking for is a high number as a borrower and a low number as an investor. Like when you're the borrower, the bank wants a low number. When you're the investor, you want the low number.
All right, so strategies for building your wealth management team. I've heard you speak about this, and I know that's a question that is probably looming on who should I have as my part of my wealth management team when I'm ready to share all those secrets that I am hiding or I wrote down on my paper and not in the chat box.
So this is, building a team it was a full-time thing for me. I had built a firm that we had built accounting firms that work with us. Like we didn't own the firms, but we had vetted them, and law firms and investment advisors, because it's different per person. But the important thing is that team needs to communicate with one another. So I do these things called discovery sessions, where I'll do one session with someone, understand like where can they recover cash, where are their biggest financial opportunities and obstacles, what is missing from their financial team. And then at the end of that, if I have everything I need, I just make the connections to them, to those team members right away based upon their situation. Other people want more help. They're thinking more legacy. They've got more going on. And then I invite them into my world. We go up to my lodge and we spend a day and we build it out even deeper at my cabin. I do 2 of those a month. So GarrettGunderson.com/discovery is probably the fastest way to build your team, because I could just make those connections. Or if you want more information before just dropping money, you can email Bobby, Bobby, at GarrettGunderson.com, and he'll have a conversation with you to find out who you need and what you're looking for and that kind of stuff, and see what's best for you. Because we've vetted a lot of firms over the last 25 years, and even some of the best firms, when they get busy, they become problematic, because this is something that so many people are looking for. So we're constantly adding to our team. Now we have questions we ask, we have applications that we have. I think I have some resources for that. I don't that we could probably share that are internal. But I have questions that I always ask to vet, to find out if they're the right people, and then they go through this application process.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah.
And I look at this through 2 lenses. One, the personal lens of getting cash flow correct, and then from the business side, where we have different types of income coming in. Like you said, all of us are in different aspects within the real estate industry. So what are those key expenditures? What are those key areas where we could lean in and invest? I know if my husband was on the call, he would tell you that even though our highest mortgage rate on any of our investment properties, I think, is 2.85, he wants to pay them all off as fast as he can. So it's some of those different mindsets.
The mind factor and the economic factor are both important.
Yeah. Great. What questions do you all have? I have a couple of more, but want to turn it over to you, give you about 30 seconds to type in the chat box, and we'll have Garrett field your questions. Take a quick look at your notes and throw them in there. And I know several of you know that I'm asking for questions, so let's go, people. Garrett, I am going to ask before we go if you could share even just one little snippet from the American Dream with our audience. So I'll let you warm your brain up on that.
I'll share the first joke I ever wrote. This is the first one. I was like, yeah, I'm a New York Times bestselling author. I wrote a book called Killing Sacred Cows, which sounds amazing, until I did my very first podcast. And the entire time I'm on the podcast, the guy kept saying, we have the author of Killing Scared Crows. The whole 90 minutes. And I'm like, what would that book be about? Like murdering birds? I don't understand. And then at the end, he was like, hey, what do you recommend I invest in? And I'm like, bifocals, literacy, maybe a new career. I mean, so that's just a little touch of the American Dream. I do a lot of jokes on tax and retirement and, frugal versus cheap, and money having a bad reputation, and inheritance, and the dumb stuff we do for money. I'm like, like my wife always asks me the worst questions about what I do for money. Like, would you punch your mom in the face for $5 million? What's wrong with you? I'm like,
And if you're thinking, yes, don't say it on this
you
show,
said five,
please.
right? I mean, tough lady. She's a tough lady, and I don't know. Like I remember saying this in once, and my dad was in. He goes, "I'll just do it for free." He says from the crowd. That's the sixth sense of humor that my family has. But I figure if I didn't do it, my mom found out, she'd probably punch me for not doing that. So.
Yeah, that's great. So is there a place that we can catch the American Ream? Is that still showing anywhere? Or are you going to go back on tour?
Probably, I'm just getting into Instagram. So Garrett B. Gunderson, go to Instagram. I'm going to start posting comedy videos here very shortly. And then the American Ream was picked up by a distributor named Multicom. So hopefully that will come out later this year. They're working on that pitch and getting it out there. So we'll kind of see what happens with that at this point. But yeah, that's
Great.
hopefully around the corner. But
Nice.
yeah, I'm going to start posting little comedy clips, and I'm those will be coming out here soon.
Right. Well, and I after our first introduction to you, I went and I started Googling for some of the comedy, and it's all very serious. And I thought, well, what happened to that guy that was on stage? Because this is like the rules of things I should be doing. I want some laughter while I'm being told what to do, school teacher style.
We'll be rolling more of that out this year for sure.
Love it. All right, we do have a few questions. Ryan asks, what is your biggest financial mistake and what did you learn from that?
I mean, like this is painful to admit, but like I had this 13-year relationship. And so when I sold my business, I didn't even have an attorney review the contract. And there was a provision in the contract where they could change the licensing at any time. So I had this 15% licensing deal. And 2 years into it, they just cut that part off because they thought I was expensive. Unfortunately for them, I was cheap because now that they cut that off, they've lost 3 times more than what they were paying me. But like it's just amazing because even when I was writing What Would the Rockefellers Do for the second time around, I was like, you always review contracts. So I had this philosophy for a minute, like, oh, if it's the right person, no contract matters, and if it's the wrong person, no contract will do. But the reality is, contracts matter. So I'm working on a contract right now. I've gone back and forth with the attorney. Even when I was in the comedy special, it's painful. It's like it's an hour of just reading legalese, but it's the difference of hard, easy. Do the hard work now and it's easier later versus easy, hard. You skip these steps, it becomes excruciating hard. And it's I judge myself about it, and it's taken a while to like get through it and forgive myself over the whole situation. But that was a multi-million-dollar mistake for sure.
Yeah. And I have to second to that on even when working with our agents and teams, along with brokerages, we always say start with the divorce in mind, because everything's the honeymoon right now when the contract's being written and all those little pieces that end up showing up, because they will at some point,
Right.
whether you are looking for mergers and acquisitions down the road or you just decide to get out of business with someone, those little things are what shows up. And it's so imperative, don't ever take my word for it. I'm not an attorney. I did stay at a Holiday Inn once, however, not an attorney. And so always having someone review those contracts is so important. All right. Bonnie says, how do you get past analysis paralysis and the fear of making the wrong move and losing money?
I have some really good tools. Like I have my idea optimizer. I have my due diligence tools. So, and I also have this philosophy when I'm getting into something, I always go, who's a co-creator that can support and inspire me and help me to think through this? And then that really helps out in any way, so that I'm not feeling isolated and alone. I've got a sounding board. But the tools in Killing Sacred Cows 2.0, the idea optimizers in there, the due diligence tools, those things are really helpful. Even going through my entire, I have these questions of any idea or any project or any investment that I run through to say, what are the assets? What are the liabilities? What are the resources I have? What's the income look like? What are the expenses? So I ask those questions to get the right information. And one of the things I can't ask, I know I'm requiring that co-creator or a mentor or someone to help me through. And even like when it's something I'm nervous about, like doing comedy for the first time, I just call that person when I know I'm going to do it or I'm going to look at it so that I move it into action.
Yeah. So, and that comes down to like the 5 people you surround yourself, or how many ever that is, that hold you accountable, but lifts you up too. It's hard to be the smartest person in the room and have growth, or have willingness to take risk.
Yeah.
Too. Tyler wants to know examples of intellectual property, and do you copyright and trademark?
I do. I was actually just emailing with my attorney this morning. So intellectual property is everything from books and courses to communities to, I mean, like SOPs that show and people could leverage with systems and processes. Uh, it's I don't know. There's so much intellectual property. So anything that's how to B2B licensing, like it's things that can even be help your client journey. It could be tools for marketing. It could be tools for sales that are leverageable and scalable. Anything that helps answer questions that you don't have to be there for, you know? And we have so many different formats. I mean, social media even has intellectual property involved in it. My favorite form is a book, but podcast would be intellectual property for people. Or, you know, I have a theatrical keynote that I wrote. That's intellectual property, or a money persona quiz. So any way that helps you to teach or uncover or deliver is part of intellectual property.
Great. Adam Nicholas is asking about the relationship between investing and hard work. Don't want to work to exhaustion, but it takes a decision to want to work for wealth. And so I'll give a little backstory on Adam. He has gone from having a company to partnering with an additional company. They had a merger here at the beginning of the year into another company, is having to step back into the workforce or work side of it to continue to grow the two companies together. So a little bit on your mindset around that.
Well, like work ethic is essential, but parameters around the work ethic are essential as well, so that we don't just run wild. And so I kind of look at it like the more active we are up front, the more we create a better life in the future. But if we think that it's just going to be like, I've just worked with people that don't have any work ethic. I just find like having my rules of when the day's over and which days I work and don't work and the time that I take off, so that it isn't just immediately consumed, because business and work have insatiable appetites. The more we feed it, the hungrier it gets. So what is it that's going to be your life design that says, hey, maybe you, like when I was younger, I worked one late night during the week, and the rest of the nights I was home by a certain time. The phone's turned off or the computer's left in the office, doesn't come into the bedroom. Like there's certain things like that that you can start to create so that you learn to offload, be more strategic, you delegate, and you don't get like overwhelmed. But at the same time, there are a lot of people that just don't want to do anything. And those kind of people that just think it's a, you know, they're going to meditate and the money's going to fall in their lap are delusional and part of the problem. We need a little bit of both. We need visualization that is combined with action, but we also need action that's combined with parameters. You know, if you don't have your guardrails, then what you'll do is get consumed by that work. So, yeah, I mean, on Mondays, I do all my business meetings. You know, Tuesdays, I do a lot of writing. Tuesday's a big writing day for me. Wednesday's a rehearsal day and a webinar day. Thursdays, another day that I might be doing filming or writing or webinars. And Fridays are the days that I'm either speaking or doing my one-on-one immersions up at the cabin. So I create structure so I'm not going from first gear to third gear to fifth gear to first to second. Like that stop and start attitude becomes a problem. Dan Sullivan wrote the Entrepreneurial Time System. I love that book. I follow that as kind of my guide of how I structure my days. And, you know, just look at your calendar and say, does this reflect the person I want to be? Is this a story that I want to tell, or did I get caught in a rut and I'm just doing what I'm pulled in to do? Because people have plenty of task lists. You don't necessarily want to be the receiving end of that task list if it isn't your vision and what you want. And people are persuasive. Like, I have to be clear about what are my rules when it comes to speaking? What are my rules when it comes to traveling? You know, if I'm gone more than 4 nights in a month, then I'm going to take a day off during the week, right? Like, I just create those rules. If you don't create rules, people will create them for you, and you might not like the result of those rules. So find what your flow is, how you like to work, and then establish with other people how you're going to work as well.
Yeah, I love that. And you know, you mentioned Dan Sullivan. I had forgotten you had mentioned him in the past. I actually worked with his group for the first 2 years, or I guess the last 2 years I did coaching through their group. And that book, Who Not How, is I actually read it for the third time just recently on making sure that I'm hiring the right person in areas where I want to continue to grow, but not be the person that's growing it. And again, it's the who is usually what's missing, so that you can get control of that calendar and create a calendar that looks like the story that you want to tell yourself.
Yep.
I have one last question, if I could. So, like I mentioned, many of our leaders are on this call today. What would be a wealth conversation or a strategy that they could take back to their teams and do as an exercise, or help to start that conversation outside of offering them money unmasked, which I'm going to tell you in just a minute. Not you, Garrett. Garrett, you already have plenty, but how to get a free copy. So,
Yeah.
what would be that
I would
exercise?
like I would get that free copy and I would take the team through the value index exercise. Like that's an amazing exercise inside of the book. You could literally just read to them. It'll only take 10 minutes, but it'll help them see the world from a bigger impact, from less scarcity, and understand when they make this flip. And then what would it take to make that flip to abundance today, not just when they get to that financial place.
Yeah, great. All right. So tell our attendees how they can find you. Where do they go to look outside of all these websites? What do you offer, and where should they go to look?
GarrettGunderson.com is probably the best place. I write a blog every week. I take the time to sit down and write it. I think that it's pretty deep and informative. So you could look at the different topics and see which ones most speak to you. I've got the quiz that you found out about. All my books will be updated next month, where you'll be able to go to my website. And I would buy the books from my website because there's good reasons to. You'll find out when you buy one. And I'm re-recording all my audiobooks right now. So I'm excited that all that kind of content's being refreshed and coming out. I took the extra time to speak slowly and clearly through my audiobooks. So that's taken me, so long, but it's worth it because when I listened to my first audiobook, it sucked because I didn't know how the hell to read one. So, and then, I do these one-on-ones 24 times a year. Help people get their financial house in order, get deep about what their money story is, heal from that so they have a more exponential result in their life, and get really clear about how they want to design their life. So, we take care of the financial pieces, plug the financial leaks, all that kind of stuff, but then we get this chance to really dive in and say, what do you want life to be like? And, find the hidden factors that are preventing that, remove those. And I just talked to someone that had done one this morning, and he kept telling me he wanted to double his business in 3 years. And I just kept asking him why. Finally found out what he really wanted was his dad had told him he loved him, but his dad's a World War II vet. So we had to figure out what love looked like. And then he healed his relationship with his son. And I'm proud to report this is his 12-month mark. He doubled his business last year because it wasn't about more effort. It was about the things that were holding him back. And when we can find those ingredients and factors. So if you're interested, Bobby at GarrettGunderson.com can find out if it's a fit for you and let you know the other things that we offer. We do have people that help build the financial teams and all that kind of stuff. So he could refer them off or, maybe do a session with me. So thanks.